Where did I drag you this time? This is how you thank me?
There's nothing wrong with your earphones. You don't have to check. The sound is botched. After I embarrassed myself filming in public in this cafe, I came to realize after a long and profound yap session, over-analyzing Maid cafes, my mic was unplugged. So bear with me.
Bestie, as your fairly odd parent, I thought you could use a little bit. I thought you could just use a little bit time outside. You know, see the world. We're collecting dust at home. We're crusty. I thought I did something nice. I planned to take you to Shangri La next. What do you mean, the Shangri La? Hotel! Who do you think I am? Elon Musk? Oh, there's no Elon here. Okay, just Musk. No, Shangri La's a cafe. We're cafe hopping today. I'm sitting in a cafe talking about another cafe. You see my thought process here. Who would have thought, to do such a thing? Shangri La is a unique cafe because it's not just a cafe. It's a maid cafe. Not unique? You've seen that before? Okay. Well, it's a plump girl maid cafe. What does that mean? A maid cafe staffed exclusively by cute plump girls opens in Akihabara. It's a Japanese cafe that only hires girls with a BMI of over 25.
シャングリラでは新人メイドを大募集しております。BMI27 以上の大学1年生から27歳までの女性。
Where the waitresses are color-coded by their weight.
So they've got their green maids, who they captioned as their smallest, and then there's their blue maids, who they captioned as their biggest maid on their TikTok. There's red too, there's purple.
And with maid cafes, you don't go for the food, all right? You go for the performance. And in this case, the business encourages their quote-unquote plump girls to put on a performance of gluttony to encourage the upsell. They want to upsell the food on the menu because in this menu, in this cafe, the food isn't just for the client, it's for them as well.
And when the pizza came, I had heard that if you offer, the maids would enjoy the pizza with you.
You as a client can order them food, which they will want you to do for the business.
Pizza for everyone. Thank you. Yes. Oh my god. Thank you.
I mean, it's all very cute, honestly. The girls are adorable. They're extremely lovable. But the establishment with this structure going on just gives me iffy vibes. Like how Hooters uses sex appeal to sell more. Their USP is plus size maids. And they make sure that's known on their TikToks with the sounds that they choose.
100キロ超えメイド揚げ揚げミートンです
The captions with the calories that the girls are eating, posting TikToks measuring the combined weights of the girls. That's 300 kgs, it says. Basically, I don't know, it's the commodification of the human body as a spectacle. It's not that deep, but if you yap hard enough, anything can be deep.
Wow. Okay. This is a business? Yes. Everything's a commodity. There's a lot of tea in this cafe, and it's not great tea, bestie. I don't know, but I think it's a little bit odd. But it's not just, it's complex. Okay? This isn't about coffee. It's not about the food. It's not about the maids. It's not even about the clientele. It's about what happens when loneliness becomes monetizable. You wouldn't understand, would you? Because you're not lonely. We're literally here together. You and me are... Loneliness is very real, and it's a business model. Japan didn't invent it as a business model. They just made it extremely efficient. It's very Japanese, to make things efficient. Listen, human beings are social. It is why I love sitting here and talking to you, bestie. But in the US, half of the adults say they feel lonely. Loneliness is a thing. It's not an epidemic at this point. This is not a personal issue. Here in Europe, a third of the people who answered a survey said that they felt lonely. Do you even know 6 people? Yeah, one of them is lonely. Who said that? Who? Who? Yes, statistics. So if you thought for once you were special, no. Everybody else is lonely too, okay? You're average. In Japan specifically, loneliness is not just real, It's aggressively real. Japan has a word for dying alone. Todokushin sounds a lot less ominous than what it means, but it literally means dying alone. Basically, passing away and not being found because nobody bothered to check on you. This loneliness is an expected symptom of modern society, alright? We no longer have our communities in the village. No, we're moving into cities that are densely populated.
But paradoxically, very secluding. High living costs make it work heavy. Job instability means that you're constantly switching your proximity to others. Your proximity to others is how you make friends with your colleagues, with your classmates, and then the competition to be on top that erodes trust in relationships. So now people's relationships are strategic. They're not authentic. And in what I think is an increasingly individualist world, independence is overvalued. It's considered peak self-sufficiency. I need anyone. It's all the modern day society that we put together.
And so it's structural isolation at this point. And the Japanese government knows this. They run national surveys on loneliness. 40% of responders say that they feel lonely. And in classic capitalism thinking, when something is at such a large scale, like loneliness is right now, it stops being a tragedy and becomes a market. Yes. Where there's a gap, there's a product. And the gap in this case is attention. Enter effective labor, the work of producing feelings in another person as part of a paid service. It's not just about being nice, it's about manufacturing some kind of warmth, some kind of comfort, belonging, excitement, specialists for a fee. This is not emotional labor, where you just have to smile and be nice, like, with customer service. That's your average cafe.
Good morning, what can I get you?
It's not your average cafe, but it's your average maid cafe. The service in a maid cafe is structured in a way where the customer pays for the attention, the ritual, the interaction, the recognition, be welcomed home. And in a society with a growing lack of attention, interaction, recognition, and anybody really welcoming you home, it feels like such a necessary escape. And so maid cafes commodify company. They turn the warmth, the attention, and the belonging into something that you can buy with money. But typically, I don't think you would have associated a maid cafe with a remedy for loneliness. Wouldn't you like to know? Researcher Luke Sharp, an academic, wrote a 360, I don't know how many page thesis on maid cafes. And guess what? And I read it. Yeah, I read it. I was genuinely interested. What is this place, this maid cafe? They give off a certain implication that they are not. Maid cafes are not sexual places, if that's what you thought. They're not places where people go to play out their fantasies. Luke states that maid cafes are not one thing. In fact, they're an interesting ecosystem, almost, with multiple different systems within, of space, of power, of performance, and consumption. And just thinking of them as this otaku male fantasy is minimizing to what they are. If you don't know what otaku means, it's basically the chronically online. It's detached from reality, obsessed with anime and manga, to the point where you don't get out of your house. A lot of people associate maid cafes with that sort of clientele. Like, that's the kind of people that frequent those places, but that is just not really true.
A lot of the clients that aren't tourists are just ordinary, lonely people. And contrary to what one might expect, a lot of elderly actually frequent maid cafes for the social interactions. Luke is saying, Luke overanalyzed, but so will we. These places bring in a wide range of patrons. Each venue has a unique structure through which they conduct their theater, basically. Their performance. And what makes their performance really pop, really stick, and have you addicted to coming back is in the complex dynamics of the interactions between the maid and the patron. For example, they're essentially maids who serve you. They appear subordinate, they greet you as miss or master. But structurally, they control access, the interaction format, the rituals, the rules. You're not in control.
But at the end of the day, this kind of establishment, the consumer does feel their social needs met. They pay, and with every consumption comes a ritual that they grow familiar with and grow to love and want more of. They're not treated as a client in these kinds of establishments. So there is a role play aspect to it. So you're not just playing. There's a bit more of some kind of a connection at the main cafe. I feel like it's kind of understandable to think that some people seek out these services when they live in a society where they can't find it. Does that not kind of perpetuate the problem? The research shows that this dopamine spike is very real, and it is followed by a hollow emptiness, a loneliness, after watching that same maid sort of walk away to tend to other duties. That reminds me a little bit of addiction, the highs and lows of addiction. And how do you get rid of that bad, hollow feeling of loneliness? Well, you just spend more money. Just spend more. Spend more on interactions and you'll get more interactions. And the most intimate, perhaps priciest of the interactions is a picture that you can take with one of the maids. And it's a thing with those who frequent these places to try and get a picture with every maid that works at the establishment. There's even seasonal sort of special pictures if it's like a maid's birthday, if it's like a Halloween thing. There's a bit of an addictive nature to the way they've commercialized company with these cafes. And it doesn't really feel like remedy to loneliness at this point. It feels like the opposite. The opposite of intimate connection. Because it's a paid service. It's a facade of a connection. But ultimately, I mean, it's important to also recognize that the customer feels their social needs satisfied. Even some maids express fulfillment in their roles. In what they do, you know?
で、世界中のご主人様、お嬢様を笑顔にするメイドさんという仕事がすごい素敵だなと思ったので
In terms of their self-image, in terms of doing something that they're genuinely interested in, engaging with others who share the same interests. So it's fulfilling to both parties, it seems, but it still feels a little odd. Is this establishment exploiting both their weaknesses, or is it really just providing a good solution to a modern day problem, like any business would? You look for a problem, you offer the solution as a service. I think it becomes clearer when we look at Shangri La, a unique twist on a unique twist. It's not just a maid cafe, but it's a plump girl maid cafe. There's really two ways I feel like this conversation could go. You could either look at this cafe as a form of inclusivity. In Akihabara, a neighborhood loaded with maid cafes, this one stands out in its body positivity. They're not conventional maids that you'd find at a maid cafe. With maid cafes in general, the performance is a commodity. The human being is a spectacle in the form of a maid.
楽しみ
With this cafe, it's not just the fact that, they're dressed as maids that is the spectacle, but it's also their weight. That's one thing that is a unique selling point for this cafe. So like with any business, okay, the maids are instructed to try and upsell. They want to try and get more money out of the client, which is, well, obviously it's a business. But with Shangri La, it's not just the potential of interactions. Their performance revolves around sort of gluttony. A stereotypical image of a fatter person, where on the menu, for instance, you can order for them to eat with you on the table as well. They tell you they're hungry, they want to eat, you have to feed them. That is part of their performance, which you don't see in your average maid cafe. Because here, a BMI over 25 is the unique selling point. That human spectacle, that performance, their weight is the entertainment, it seems. This has stopped being about loneliness. At this point, there was a comment, I'll plug it in if I can find it, basically said something along the lines of how regulars often have to check newcomers who bully the chubby girls in the cafe. They're snickering and laughing at the spectacle. It's like a little circus, but there's no lions jumping through hoops. It's just waitresses. It's a bit odd. I don't know. I don't want to say it's humiliating. Maybe it's not right to jump in and say, oh, your weight being a spectacle is humiliating. There are people who don't experience the term fat as an insult, more like a description, but perhaps a source of personal power. So the maids at Shangri La are not victims because of their weight. What makes Shangri La, I think, stand out is that they monetize certain identities. In this case, go be gluttonous and make me more money. They're not trying to normalize being a fat maid in this business, alright? On the contrary, no, they're exploiting it as an exception, as a consumable experience, especially considering in Japan, it's not really well accepted socially. So for this cafe in particular, it's not really about whether they enjoy eating, being named as marshmallow or plump or chubby or whatever. The question is why that enjoyment suddenly becomes interesting to the market only when it can be packaged as a unique selling point.
But if we want to overanalyze it like Luke did in his 360-page thesis, we can ask the question, is the establishment really being inclusive, or is it only accepting that identity, being a plus-size maid, as a money-making spectacle? And if that's the case, then is that acceptance social or just transactional?
What are your thoughts? Share them down in the comments below, guys. What do you think? Do you think this kind of perpetuates the loneliness issue? Well, we haven't only commodified company in the case of Shangri La. We've commodified, I feel like, human dignity, to a certain extent. Your dignity as a human being is bought you know, for the small price of like, oh, let me just, for an interaction. This is how it feels. Maybe I'm reading into it too much because it's really not that deep. I don't know. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Honestly, I feel like it's hard to judge, you know? If somebody's is extremely lonely and they find comfort in a certain service and they frequent that service and they're willing to pay, it just raises the question, are these businesses exploiting that sort of flaw in society? Or are they filling the gaps? But yeah, I don't know. That's for thought. You know, just let me know what you think. Share your thoughts on the comments below. I'm gonna head out. You get warm because I'm freezing. I'm literally shaking. I'm literally freezing. You can tell. Bye, guys.